Hey, hello everyone, and welcome to Extreme Graphics Tech. My name is Angelo, and I thought it would be interesting to make a series of videos checking at the technical evolution of the Call of Duty series. After all, even if you like or not the games, Call of Duty is one of the biggest game franchise in the world. So I thought it would be interesting to see how the tech has evolved, and especially because I've been playing all the Call of Duty games recently. I haven't finished them all, but I am, seeing, and it's interesting. So I thought you guys to share, my findings with you. So in 2003, Infinity Wars, a studio made of previous developers for the Medal of Honor series, created the first Call of Duty, and that game was released on PC, and it was using the ID Tech 3, which is the engine used for games like Quake 3. So as you can see, the game is a very rudimentary. Sorry for the pronunciation, but you see, it's a very simple game. Everything is very squarish. However, they try, to put some touches and make the game look better. I wouldn't say that by the time the game launched, it was one of the most technically advanced games. I remember playing it, and even though it was a very good game, I don't remember being wowed by the graphics. They were good, and as you can see, they are very flourish here and there, but at the end of the day, it was an engine that everybody knew we could play. We already had many other launches, so there wasn't anything revolutionary about this particular engine. However, they did the best they could, and the game, surpasses the limited technicalities or limitations by a very good gameplay. I feel always in tension, and I remember, even though it wasn't the most immersive graphic, I was very immersed in the game. You can see that the game is missing a lot of features that we take for granted nowadays, like ambient occlusion, casting shadows, but you can still see some lights being reflected on walls. You can still see some lights affecting something, but most of these things are normally baked inside. They are not like dynamic, so well, it looks okay, but it's still very rudimentary if you ask me. However, this is where it all started, and you can see some of the mechanics of the gameplay, some buttons, and even the way the game plays, that it stands even to this day. But as you can see here, the game is lacking a lot. So everything seems to be very uniformly lit. The light, even though you see some areas like they seem to be more light than others, this is no other than just an effect on the textures because the light is baked. However, see here, this area is interesting because you can see how they make this appearance like a hole is being created when something explodes, because they are removing part of the original geometry, which is interesting and a nice effect. And you can see on the back how there is a lot of these effects, the flashes that make it like a bombing, and you can see the people the parachuters, right, paratroopers falling from the sky, which give this sense of epic scope. I think that was one of the reasons this game was so well received at the time, even when technologically it wasn't the most advanced game by the time or anything like that, but still it was a very good game. And of course you can play this at 4K 60 or even 144 FPS, or I don't remember if this has any limitation in that, but you can play at 4K for sure, no problems at 60 FPS, like I'm doing here with anything today. This is a game that came in 2003, so obviously you are all going to be able to play this with anything you have today that is even 6 or 8 years old. GPU should not give you any trouble with this game. So in 2004, then it was time to release Call of Duty on console after the success of the PC game. I don't know if this game was developed just after the first game or at the same time, because the game is not a port of the PC version. This is like their own original take, and this was released at the time of the GameCube, PlayStation 2, and Xbox. And as you can see here, from my own opinion or point of view, this game looks much better than the PC version. Not necessarily texture, which are a little bit fuzzy here and there, but I think in terms of lights and modeling, I feel like there is a lot more geometry, the density of it, and all the elements seems more organic and natural. The textures, yes, if you check both, they don't look as good, and they also share some of the limitations of the time, which is most of the light is baked, they don't cast shadows, the ambient occlusion is essentially missing. But even so, this game, from my point of view, looks so much better than the PC version of the game. However, there are differences. For example, this game is smaller in scope because the memory in those systems was much more limited, so the levels were changing and loading more often than they did on PC. Still, if you play this game today, like on Dolphin, which is where I'm playing this, it is the GameCube version, played at 4K, you can see that there is a lot of details in this game that probably were missed when the game launched because of the limited resolution of the original system on those CRTs. However, that also help or play in favor of the games, because obviously they had this thing like they look better than they actually were. However, I think this you can see how a game that is from 2004 still sort of hold on okay, all things considered normal. This at this time of in these times, this sort of 3D games didn't usually hold very well. You see, for example, things like the interface, where they are very low resolution, and that's a clear sign of the times, where obviously they didn't need to go high on them. Even if you play this at 4K, then you can see that at the time, I think we were not appreciating all the details the game had to offer because of the limited resolution that those consoles were working at, but also because of the limited resolution of the TVs at the time. When we play these games in higher resolution, there is a lot of little tiny details that we can see, especially in textures that were not available to us at the time. So it's quite an interesting exercise to see these games like in a new light. And in this case, Call of Duty for a console is actually quite a good release, and I think it's much better than the PC version, at least in terms of graphics. But then 2005 arrived, and with this, the next chapter in the Call of Duty franchise for PC, Call of Duty 2. And now I have to say the jump in graphical fidelity is quite high from my point of view. Let's just start by saying that Infinity Ward is not using ID Tech 3, or at least not like the vanilla version. This is called the Infinity Ward Engine 2.0 or IW Engine 2.0. And I think the reason why it's called 2.0 is because they consider the first ID Tech iteration the first one. However, they took that engine, and I don't know if they completely transformed or the core of it was still that, but they moved it past what was possible on the first game, and now we have a game that is more densely rich in terms of geometry. You can see there is a lot more of geometry than in the previous game, where only was like square houses. Now we see more natural shapes, a lot of debris, a lot of other effects here that makes the game so much better. But it's not just that, it's also the texture. The texture work in this game is so much better, and it has this bomb mapping effect that was very used at the time, where everybody was, every new innovation was then applied to every single game, whether they require it or not. But I think in this case it looks quite good, and you can see how the flash of the guns and the lights are affecting more of the environment than they used to be. As you can see, for example, here, look how the light is affecting the gun. So there is more of light interaction than there was on the first game. It's still not perfect. There is still a lot of light not correct, like there is no ambient occlusion or global illumination, all these things we give for granted now. But it was a much better game in that sense, and we can see a much better particle system, for example, to make the snow and to make some of the explosion, where they look quite good. Of course, this game is also one of those games that you can run at 4K, full resolution, 60 FPS, anything you want, with no problems whatsoever with today's technology. And this game still looks quite good, all things considered, when we look at from our modern perspective. It's a 2008 2005 game, so it's been a while, but I still think, this game holds up quite good, especially compared to the first game. When we see both games side by side, there is really a lot of, push forward. One thing that I noticed in the second game that I haven't seen before is the LOD system. You can see here that there is like 2 levels of geometry when you get closer or further from some of the objects, and I think you have seen that in this footage, and that's one of the first, or maybe the first Call of Duty game that uses that in order to achieve a better fidelity and to have more geometry on a screen. So it was very clear that there was a lot of innovations and things going on with the engine to try to make it as better as possible, as best as possible. Now on console, they didn't have to wait for a year for the game to be released, and actually this game came out 2 weeks before the actual PC game, and this is called Call of Duty 2 Big Red 1, which is a different version than the PC version, and that's clear why. Even though there is a clear graphical evolution between this and the first game, and even though I said that I think the first console game looked better than the first PC game, I don't think this is the case for the second version. From my point of view, it's clear that the Call of Duty 2 for PC is much better in terms of graphical quality than the console version. However, that doesn't mean the console version is not good. As you can see, there is a lot of improvement here that has been made to respect to the first game. The textures are better, the textures are more varied, more clear, and it looks so much defined than the first one. Also, you can see the light is working in a different way, creating more atmosphere than the first game, the smoke and everything combined. You can see, for example, the fire here, how it's affecting the inside of the house, or how the fire there is affecting the house around that. And we can say it's baked, and I think it's a mix, because you can see how it's the light is flickery, which shows that there is something real time going on, even if it may be just an effect to give the sensation of real time. You can see there is a lot of tricks here made to make the game look better, and it's like more organic. It's not everything like square shapes, and you can see that in this. We have to think that this is a 2005 game running on a GameCube, and clearly you can see that the game looks much better than the first one. Yes, it's not like hyper realistic games that we have today, but you can see the shapes seem to have more geometry in them, and they seem to be more natural than the first game. So I really like the lighting and everything that is going on this game, all things considered, and I think it hasn't aged that bad, respectable to other games that I have seen that they are like looking very bad, very squarish, or textures not very good. I think in this case this game still looks quite good, especially when you look at through the eyes of something like Dolphin running at 4K, which is the case here. You see this playable part, you can see the smoke, which doesn't just feel like a texture, even when obviously it is just an alpha texture, but it looks more organic, more realistic, and you can see that the shape of the mountain and the light that they have on them is quite good. So I think they did a very good job, but still the second game on PC is surpassing the console version. I think the PC is always evolving, while the consoles remain the same for 5 to 6 years. So that's the advantage that you can see on PC, that they go the extra mile, and it's always evolving. And being Call of Duty a PC franchise, then well, obviously that's what's gonna happen. Having said that, it's funny because this is the next game in the franchise, which is Call of Duty 3, that came out for all consoles, but it's the only game in the series besides the portable versions and those spin-off that has not appeared on PC. It's the only one on the main line of Call of Duty games that never received a PC version. And also, this game is not running in the Infinity Ward engine, because this game was not made by Infinity Ward. It was made by Treyarch, and they used their own engine, which is interesting, because even though it's a new engine or a different engine, we can see that there is a clear evolution from the Call of Duty 2 graphics that we were seeing, because this was the first game that came into the new generation of console at the time, that was Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3. The version you are seeing at the moment is the PlayStation 3 version running on RPCS 3, which is running at 4K. This was limited to 30 FPS, but even so, I think this game looks quite good. And they started using new techniques for texturing. As you can see, one of them is this texture thing where you get close to the elements, and instead of them getting only blurry, they also have this weird effect like a parallax thing that makes the texture still looks quite good. So one of the biggest change you can see here is like the amount of destruction and elements, geometry to compose a scene. Even though light is still, very basic, and well, light is one of the hardest thing to, that it needs more power, and we can see that when we're trying to play anything with ray tracing. I think this game still looks phenomenal. There is a lot of things missing, like especially ambient occlusion, which from my point of view is it's very important to make things look like they are in the actual environment. However, shadows and are being cast in a more realistic way, respectful to the previous game. And in here you can see there is a lot of going on, like rain and explosions, a lot of characters and everything happening. The light is affecting everything, and I think that looks phenomenal. This game had a lot of pressure because it was supposed, or it was one of the first games to come in the new in the next gen consoles at the time, and so everybody was very the expectations were high. And I remember playing this on the Xbox 360 and I was blown away because my computer at the time wasn't even close to achieve something as good as this was, even at the resolution, which was like 720p at the time. I don't know the internal resolution of this one in specific, but my computer was playing games in 3D but a much lower resolution like this, like 800 by 600 or 124 by 768 at the most. So this Call of Duty 3 was really an incredible achievement, especially because it was supposedly made in only 8 months. Of course, Call of Duty 3 wasn't only launched on next-gen consoles, so it launched on PlayStation 2, Xbox, GameCube, and so on. And the one you see at the moment is the Wii version. And as you can see, it's not bad, I will say. All things considered, it looks quite decent, especially when you're playing this at 4K. You can see the difference between this and the PlayStation 3 version, but I think it still looks quite good. Of course, you can see some of the places where they had to cut some corners, like on the background. You see the background there? Well, in the PlayStation 3 version, that's real geometry, but here is only a 2D image. But in the case of the world, it's hard to realize. I had to look twice to realize that they were not real geometry. So I would say that's a good win for the game. So starting from this point, I believe most of the games were the same for console and PC. But before we get to the next episode, I'm going to stop here because, there is a lot of Call of Duty happening every 3 or 4 years. So that's how we are going to continue this series. So the next episode, we are going to cover the next 4 years of the franchise on consoles and PC, if there is enough difference between them to be covering. In the meantime, I hope you like this very quick and shallow preview of the Call of Duty franchise, and I would like to know what you want me to improve from this video, what you would like me to do or to add, or maybe to do something special extra for this going on. And I'm always open to your suggestions because I honestly want to improve every one of my videos for you guys to enjoy. So I hope you like this one, and if you did, please like, subscribe. It's free and it really helps my channel. And as always, see you on the next video.